Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's jump into a retail drama where a hard-working grocery store employee, fed up with their micromanaging boss, Karen, decides to take matters into their own hands. After budget cuts led to slashed hours, OP proves their worth by picking up shifts in other departments, earning praise from everyone but Karen. When Karen tries to punish OP for stepping up, a power play unfolds, leading to a satisfying twist that shows what standing your ground can achieve. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. How I fired my manager before they fired me. This story takes place about 2 months before I quit my job at the grocery store and started my first year of college. The story has a bit of exposition, so please bear with me. Cast: Karen manager, store manager, meat manager, grocery manager. I was glad when I got to put my Karen manager in her place. Things had slowly started to cool down, and for the next few months, it was business as usual. The old store manager had to open another store, so they brought in a new one. This one was very professional and quite kind. This store manager always recognized various employees in different departments for their hard work. This recognition of us lower employees made our Karen manager less than happy. I had started to notice a lot more people being hired, and everyone's hours suffered because of it. I found out later they did this because part-time employees could be paid less and they wanted to cut costs. 'Tis the life of a retail worker. I wanted to keep making money in preparation for college, so I went into Karen manager's office and said, "Me, hey Karen manager, I noticed my hours were being cut and I wanted to see if I could pick up some extra shifts." She scoffed at me and said, "Karen manager, it's a department-wide decision. If you want hours, go to another department. I wouldn't waste your time, though." I looked at her confused and asked, "Me, why not?" Karen manager: "They only have hard-working employees in their departments. You wouldn't fit in." I was dumbfounded. I thought Karen's BS bully routine was over, but boy was I wrong. I stood there unsure what to say. Meanwhile, Karen manager had another umbrage smile plastered on her face. I just turned around and walked out of her office. I didn't know if Karen manager had already lied to the other managers or not, but I might as well ask. I first went to the meat department and explained my situation. I told the manager that our department's hours were being cut and asked if I could do anything to help them out. The meat manager smiled warmly and said, "Meat manager, I understand how frustrating low hours can be. We have a guy on vacation for a few weeks, and we've had to stay late to wash all the pans and plates for our meat. It's simple washing and drying. You get to wear headphones within reason, and you'd make what a starting meat associate would. Want the job?" I was beaming and immediately took the offer. The job was simple as he promised, and I took it seriously. I wanted to show other managers that I was a hard worker and reliable. 3 weeks passed by with no issue. Inevitably, their missing associate came back, and I had to be let go from that position. Luckily, I'd spoken to the grocery manager the day before, and our conversation was somewhat similar. I explained my situation, and she understood. She said, "Grocery manager, you just need to tidy up the shelves, put out product on aisle-labeled carts, and held unload trucks when they come in. Your pay will be a starting grocery associate pay." For context, both types of associate pay were an increase from my normal department. I took the offer and immediately helped the grocery department. Everything was fine until grocery hired a full-time employee and I had to go back to my normal department. I expected business as usual, but I got one hell of a surprise. The first day back, Karen manager yanked me in her office. The conversation went like this. Karen manager: "What the hell do you think you're doing, OP? I told you our department's hours were cut." Me: "I know, you said I could try working with other departments. You also said some other nasty things, but I don't care to repeat those." She glared at me and said, Karen manager: "OP, you're making our department look bad. We're trying to cut costs and you're burning through hours we don't have." I decided to correct this smug Karen and said, "Me, I understand you want to cut costs and you only have so many hours. I didn't take up any extra hours from our department. I took your rude suggestion and worked for other departments that were short-staffed and had an abundance of hours. I did nothing wrong." She growled at me and said, Karen manager, listen, OP, it's not fair to others in our department if you get full-time and other employees don't. I held my ground and said, me. This system of hiring tons of part-timers is stupid, and it's hurting quality full-time employees who need the hours. If you insist on hiring all these people, there's nothing stopping them from doing exactly what I did. There are plenty of departments that could use help. I was fed up with Karen's attitude and spoke my mind. Karen manager, if you think my management practice is so ridiculous, you can just leave. I was tired of her BS and just smiled. Me. Okay, I will. I turned in my effects and clocked out. I said bye to my friends and drove home. The next day, I was enjoying sleeping in for once when I got a phone call. It was the new store manager. I answered. Me. Hello, store manager. How are you this morning? Store manager. Sorry to bother you, OP, but could you come back to the store? I looked over the firing of you yesterday, and Karen manager was totally out of line. I talked to other managers you've worked for, and they all had glowing reviews of your work. We're pretty short-staffed, and we need you back. Me. I smiled. It was always nice to be needed, after all. If you transfer me to grocery effective immediately, with the pay bump to boot, I'll help your department when needed, but I want grocery manager as my new boss. Store manager. Done. I just pulled up your file and transferred you over. You have my word, grocery manager's your new boss, and Karen manager has no authority over you anymore. I'll be having a long talk with her over her managerial practices, believe me. I smirked and said, me. I'll see you in 10 minutes. I drove to the store and walked in. I picked up my effects from the store manager and shook his hand. I saw the shocked form of Karen manager and snickered. I turned to a nearby customer with a smile. These last few weeks were going to be the best. The best part of that situation is killing your nemesis with kindness. You know you've won, they know you've won, and you're consistently polite and professional towards them. They want an excuse to smack you down, but if they do, they're the bad guy. And our next story. HOA gone wild when neighborhood rules turn to tyranny. When my wife and I bought our first house in an HOA community last year, we were initially skeptical. The houses were cookie-cutter townhomes, and we weren't thrilled about joining an HOA, but properties were selling fast, and this seemed like a decent option. At first, everything seemed great. The rules were reasonable, the neighbors were friendly, and the HOA wasn't too overbearing. Then she moved in. Let's call her Karen, because, of course, it fits. Karen wasn't just your average HOA board member. She was the self-proclaimed enforcer of neighborhood morality. She installed a camera on her house specifically to monitor violations and would proudly tell anyone who'd listen that she patrolled the community looking for rule breakers. One day, she casually mentioned to me that she'd already counted 8 unauthorized fire pits in the neighborhood. Her meddling quickly infected the HOA board. Before she arrived, inspections were rare and low-key. After she joined, it felt like we were living under constant surveillance. My first real run-in with Karen's new regime came last summer when we got a warning letter. Why? Our 2-year-old son's trike had been left in our driveway. I admit it was a minor oversight. It was probably left there after one of his impromptu play sessions. But this wasn't just a friendly reminder. It came with a photo of the trike taken from the street. I wasn't fined, but the level of pettiness annoyed me. Then Karen escalated her campaign against neighborhood anarchy. One day she stopped me as I was walking my dog to rant about how the neighborhood had gone downhill with kids playing outside, being loud, and ruining her peace. I emailed the property manager pointing out how her behavior was making the neighborhood a police state. I even mentioned how she bragged about trespassing into people's yards to inspect for violations. The property manager brushed it off with a generic response, "We're just upholding the rules." Things quieted down for a while until last week. This time we got a warning about our son's slide and water table. We always stored them on our patio when not in use, assuming it was fine since the landscapers could still do their job. Apparently that wasn't good enough. The kicker? The photo they sent was clearly taken from within our yard. This was crossing a line. Over the summer, the HOA had sent a community-wide notice reminding residents that walking through someone's yard without permission was trespassing. But now they were doing exactly that. I fired off another email pointing out the blatant hypocrisy. I would like advance notice the next time there's an inspection, I wrote. This isn't about avoiding violations, it's about privacy. I don't want strangers in my yard taking pictures without my knowledge. The HOA itself stated that being on someone's property without permission constitutes trespassing. My wife and son play in our yard, and seeing someone snapping photos would be creepy, to say the least. Unless given prior notice, I will assume anyone in my yard is trespassing and call the police as per your own guidelines. The property manager responded, doubling down, "The board has the right to inspect properties at their discretion, and it was their decision not to provide notice." That was it. I couldn't let Karen and her minions turn my home into a surveillance zone. I started digging through the HOA bylaws, and lo and behold, there was no mention of inspections, let alone granting them the right to trespass. Armed with this information, I consulted a lawyer who confirmed that the HOA's actions were overstepping. I sent the board a formal letter citing the bylaws and reiterating my stance. No advance notice, no entry. Then I took action. I installed security cameras around my yard, making sure to cover every angle. A week later, the cameras caught Karen herself creeping through my backyard, clipboard in hand, taking photos. I immediately called the police. When the officers arrived, I showed them the footage and explained the situation. Karen tried to play the victim, claiming she had official HOA business, but the officers weren't buying it. They issued her a warning for trespassing. I shared the footage with the neighborhood Facebook group. The reaction was swift and brutal. Turns out I wasn't the only one dealing with Karen's antics. Dozens of neighbors chimed in with their own stories of her overreach. The backlash was so severe that Karen was forced to step down from the board within a month. The best part of your story? I immediately called the police. When the officers arrived, I showed them the footage and explained the situation. Installing security cameras was a brilliant move. Not just to protect your privacy, but to expose her hypocrisy for the entire neighborhood to see. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.